have you guys heard of the concept of ludonarrative dissonance or ludonarrative resonance?
You know I've written essays on ludonarrative dissonance.
Have you really?
Yeah, I have.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Oh, shit.
I was trying to write for a website back in the day, and that was like my biggest thing was I was trying to share my work, and I was like, hey, here's something on ludonarrative dissonance in Uncharted, because Nathan Drake is a mass murderer who has killed thousands. Canonically, he has killed more people than 9/11, and he's a lovable rogue who you just want to help succeed. And so to me, like, that's the biggest example of ludonarrative is Uncharted specifically. But they passed me by for I don't know what else, but they didn't like that.
Yeah, people.
What's the definition of ludonarrative?
I want to explain it,
dissonance?
but Tyler, you've actually written an essay on it, so why don't you explain it?
Oh no, I mean the layman's terms is like that the actions of the game character don't match the actions of the narrative. So I would argue that Last of Us is a example of not having ludonarrative dissonance because there's
ludonarrative resonance.
Resonance, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Because there's less people to kill, and you do kill people, but it's in the story, and you're sort of written to be like morally questionable, whereas Uncharted is you kill a bunch of people, but it kind of doesn't matter. It's all in good fun, so you don't have to think about it.
Another great example that I came across just reading about it today, it's a term I'm familiar with, but I just it didn't really hang with me, is how in Bioshock has this theme around free will versus slavery, right? And as you defeat the big daddies, you are given this choice whether or not you harvest the little sisters or you free them, and then you just take a little bit of what they give you, right? A little bit of their spirit essence or whatever. And
the Eve.
Yes.
No, Adam. They have Adam.
I think it's
Adam.
Sorry,
it's Adam.
And the idea basically being that you have sort of free will to decide which of these actions you're going to take. But if you remember in that game, and I had this problem, like I got, I think, one of the bad endings because I harvested like 3 little sisters before I was all like, no, I feel bad, so I'm going to start like freeing them. But if you do, it's basically you can't go halfway on it. And so in that way, you're robbed of your free will. Your own actions rob you of the free will to determine your outcome. And therefore, that ties in with a sort of ludonarrative resonance to the thematic elements of the story.
The only example I can think of now that I'm familiar with the term is Yakuza.
Hell yeah.
Just with, just like how everybody's like, Kiryu doesn't kill, like that's like his one rule. But within the actual fights, like he's stabbing people in the gut, he's beating people in the head, over the head with baseball bats. Like there's no way that like none of these people are dead.
Right.
There's absolutely no way. Like you body slam somebody with the motorcycle, they're not surviving.
That's sort of how it was in like Arkham Asylum or Arkham.
I was going to say the Batman series, same thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those men are, if they're not dead, they are disabled for life from severe brain injuries and spine fractures. They're all going home in wheelchairs.
Yes, they are.
Welcome to of Mics and Memory Cards, a complete rundown of the PlayStation 1 game library, all 4,105 of them. My name is Tyler, and I am joined by
Jacob
and Kameron.
And today we are talking about the seminal jiggle physics classic, Dead or Alive. Does anyone have any experience with this series?
Yeah, I do. I've played... I'm mostly familiar with Dead or Alive 2 and 3 because I think they came out on the original Xbox. And I've also played the wonderful spin-off Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball.
Hell yeah.
How extensively have you played that? Like once at a friend's house or like
every night, every week since he turned 14 years old.
Every day for a summer.
15 minutes after everyone else goes to bed.
No, actually, a friend would bring his Xbox and games over. So like this is a friend who introduced me to like Halo and Dead or Alive and just like the Xbox, like their arsenal basically. But one of those games or two of those games were Dead or Alive 2 and 3. because they came in like a double pack. But then after he played a bit of Dead or Alive, he's like, hey, I have this other Dead or Alive game, and he put it on, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
It made him a lifelong fan of beach volleyball.
Was it fun? I mean, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but
I think I enjoyed the absurdity of it. You know, like there's like a photo mode where you like take pictures of them. They're like in their swimsuits and they're like, you know, laying about in the sand or splashing water in the pool or whatever. And you just take pictures. And I think it saves to, I don't know if it saves to like the game's memory or the Xbox's memory, but then you'll have photos of Dead or Alive characters. There is an actual volleyball, like beach volleyball game mode. There's a bunch of like pool mini games where you like jump from platform to platform in the pool, and they're all like made out of like little floaties and stuff. That's all I can remember of it. I remember having fun, but then again, this is me as a young man. No, younger than that. I don't remember how old I was during this. Maybe like 13, 14, and was like, this
photo's actually saved directly on your father's hard drive, so he can look at it and be disappointed in you.
Hey, son, what are you?
It's the exact same thing as that app that the Speaker of the House has with his son that alerts him every time that his adult son watches pornography.
Oh my God, I'm glad someone else knows about that. It's horrifying.
Yeah. It's just Cameron's dad being all like, oh, God, Dead or Alive.
Here we go again.
At least it's better than Mortal Kombat.
He's like, I'd be fine with Kasumi, but Lei Fang? Come on.
Who even likes Lei Fang? I would have accepted Ayane.
So we're bearing the lead a little bit, but Dead or Alive is a series most famous for giant bouncing breasts on its female characters. There are male characters too, one of which is like one of the most iconic characters in gaming, but I believe he's been overshadowed by the looming orbs of every female character within the game, and
by the
we'll get
well-endowed
into how problematic this depiction of the female form is later on, I think. But Shots, do you have any experience with the series?
Not really. I do remember when I think maybe it was the 360 era. Is that when Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball, Extreme Beach Volleyball came out? Was that for the 360?
There was one for the OG
I think
Xbox,
the one I played
and then one for 360.
Yeah, that's the one I played.
Okay, I think I remember the shift to the 360 version, and that was a time when I was like really hyper, to my shame, like a part of like the whole System Wars battle that was like raging on the fucking GameSpot forums. I still have that account, by the way, created in 2004, and nice. Thank you. And I remember seeing this Dead or Alive game get announced. And I don't know that I even thought that it looked really cool so much as I really didn't like this idea that like Xbox had Halo, which just couldn't be dethroned. And now they had Forza and it was going up against Gran Turismo. And I was just really pissed that it seemed like Microsoft was like crushing Sony to the ground with all of these games. And I was not excited about Dead or Alive. Of course, if
only we knew then what we knew now.
And I ultimately mostly just like left it to the imagination. And I think probably had like a streak of misogyny where it's like, that game is just, you know, flopping breasts and what have you. So playing it now for the first time, I gotta say, I'm kind of surprised by how much I really liked it. Really taken aback by it. I was not prepared. I was ready to let Tyler's opinion sort of color my own, but really I was like, ooh, I spent a lot of time in my car like fucking just yanking that joystick, really trying to just get that game to give me what I wanted, you know? And I got there. Oh buddy, I got there. That's right, I do it in my car. That's where I game.
As for myself, the only other game in the series that I've played was weirdly the 3DS game, which was along with Street Fighter 4, when they didn't know what else to do with the system within its first year of release. There were a couple weird ports of fighting games, but the Dead or Alive for the 3DS, I want to say it's called like Dead or Alive Dimensions, is technically an original game built on one of the older engines, but it like runs through the story of, I want to say, the first 4 games. But rather than need to actually like learn button combinations, the touchscreen, you can just poke things on the touchscreen and it'll execute combos and like series of holds and throws for you. So going back to it this time, I was like,
wow,
I've played this. I've played it for at least, I don't know, 5-6 hours on the 3DS. None of it was retained. This was a completely new experience for me. And Jacob, I'm really glad that you were not colored by my opinions of it, because I assume you read ahead in the outline. I'm not a big fan of this game. And I don't know if I would be if I tried some later games in the series. There's some definite jank here, but maybe it's a good jank.
Oh, yeah.
You had a jank yank in your car, it sounds like.
I did. Jake had a jank yank.
Look, I'm not about to sit here and try and tell you that the core of Dead or Alive is more than tits and punches, because that would be insincere. Dead or Alive was intentionally built on two things, which are sex and violence. I am going to tell you that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. To ignore our base instincts and bury our violent or fetishistic tendencies is an effort in futility.
Not to mention entirely un-American.
Yes, this is the most American Japanese-made game I think I've ever played.
Ooh, that's a good question to return to time and time again.
Actually, yeah, we should. There's going to be. I already contradicted myself 3 other times in my head, but let's table that Patreon discussion for later on. Now, that said, there is more going on under the surface of the game. The series has a kind of rock, paper, scissors system that keeps the flow of battle from getting too stagnated, and the original game has danger zones around the edges of the ring that straight up blow up the character if they fall or are thrown to the ground out there.
It's brutal that you can get knocked down out there, not die, and then get knocked down again and continually explode. It was not... That was my character bounced almost as much as her tits.
Oh, you stole the joke from me.
Dang. I didn't realize that was a thing in this one. I don't remember them in 2 or 3, so I was completely flabbergasted. No, I don't want to say that word. I was completely
flabbergasted,
caught by surprise. I was flabbergasted, y'all.
I don't think they're in later games in the series either. I think it's just this first one.
Because I think you could just literally ring out, or there's a barrier. I'm not sure if that can be broken
different
through.
Different ones have different things. Later on, you can ring out, and there's barriers that can knock you into new sections of the levels, I think.
Those are always fun.
I don't 100% recall. Now, whereas Tekken 2 felt janky and slow, Dead or Alive feels janky and fast. A game that barely gives you time to think before your counterattack is then countered again. And while it certainly isn't my favorite fighting game series, I think it's an important one to talk about in the evolution of 3D fighters as a whole.
I do think, because you're right, this is such a great description that Tekken 2 felt janky and slow, this feels janky and fast. And it really did feel fast. And the fact that I could really rush through it, it just kept me playing in a way that Tekken 2 always felt a little bit more frustrating. I think it benefited the three of us playing together where it's just "Ugh!" and I could hand the controller off. Whereas here,
yeah,
I would just press that start button. I would skip right. I know I lost. Okay, I'm back in. And I would make the same mistakes over and over and over again. But then eventually I'd figured it out. Just like life.
I just tried to anticipate their attacks and see if I could counter, and it was always hit or miss. I never feel like I actually got the timing of how to counter their attacks, and the AI is always just better at it.
Now, to start with the narrative here, we're going to go way back to Tecmo. Now, Tecmo is, again, one of those Japanese companies that got its start in a pre-video game world. It wasn't until I started doing research for this podcast as a whole that I realized just how many of these game companies existed prior to 1970.
Yeah, I would have thought just Nintendo, but apparently,
me too.
Yeah, a lot of others.
But even Tecmo, but I think Tecmo has the weirdest start. Tecmo was founded in 1967 as a fusion between the Imperial Trustee Corporation, founded in 64, and the Nippon Yacht Company, founded in 67. They started out selling cleaning equipment under the name Tekken, which I think is why Itagaki hates Tekken so much. He feels like it's threatening their previous existence. But under the name Tekken, though they began to sell quote-unquote amusement equipment 2 years later. So this would be in 1969.
Yeah, heavy quote and quote.
I don't know what it means. I tried to look up what they meant by amusement.
Oh, you know.
I think we all know,
you know what
kind of equipment we amuse ourselves
Considering the game we're talking about right now, I think we know.
Tecmo as a name came to standardized use with their first home video game, which was developed in 1986 for the Famicom, called Mighty Bomb Jack. Now, while Tecmo developed quite a few games for arcades in the mid-'80s through the mid-'90s, they were bigger on console development, specifically known best in the West for Ninja Gaiden and Tecmo Bowl for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. In Japan, they were also pretty well known for the football RPG hybrid Captain Tsubasa series. However, around the mid-'90s, they were floundering. The company had developed some moderately successful sports titles, but they weren't doing anything particularly revolutionary with that genre and were on the verge of bankruptcy. In 1995, they were putting out Super Nintendo games like Tecmo Super Bowl and Ninja Gaiden Trilogy, both of which were essentially just re-releases of the NES games I mentioned earlier with little to no improvements. Almost no improvements visually either. They needed to come up with something that would spark gamers' imaginations and, most importantly, get that bag.
So you're telling me that this is the same story of Naughty Dog, but several decades beforehand. It's just them re-releasing games that came out for the previous system.
And they only did it in the earlier generations of consoles. Man.
It's all just a big spinning wheel. Now enter Tomonobu Itagaki, a controversial, outspoken fixture in the Japanese gaming industry. He's now characterized by his long hair, sunglasses, and his hatred of Tekken. Itagaki reminds me of a Japanese John Romero, who was one of the designers on the original Doom games. He's a developer who comes off more as a rock star through a mix of ego and genuine talent. He has an office full of katanas made by his father, and he's been accused of sexual harassment, though the charges were dismissed and deemed consensual by his company. He claims that his daughter is one of his primary influences, and his games are full of massive, heaving breasts. He is an enigma of a man, and inextricably linked with the story of Dead or Alive.
No, I was just gonna say, like, if for those listening, if you like pull up a picture of Tomonobu Itagaki, for me at least, I think he reminds me more of he's like a Japanese Tommy Wiseau, you know, with the long hair and the sunglasses. I think he kind of fits more of that description.
He looks just like him.
Though I do see the John Romero though, but John Romero's so cool. I don't want to compare.
I honestly have to say that, like, having an office full of katanas and being accused of sexual harassment is a Venn diagram that's really just a single circle.
It's exactly it.
I wrote it like they're contrasts, and as I was reading it, I was like, of course he did. This makes sense. All of this adds up to yes,
to Dead or Alive.
Clear picture of a man. Itagaki was born on April Fool's Day in 1967 and, bizarrely, graduated from Waseda School of Law in 1992. I don't know if he passed the bar, but he never actually practiced law, as he joined Tecmo the same year he graduated and worked on the SNES version of Super Tecmo Bowl as a graphics programmer. His next official credit is as director of Dead or Alive 4 years later. Now, it's not completely uncommon for game designers, especially Japanese designers, to go uncredited for their work during this time period, meaning the early 90s, even into the late 90s. So my supposition is that Itagaki was doing something at Tecmo and caught the eye of his superiors as he was doing whatever that something is. There is simply no other reason that he would be handed such a high-profile project in the company with only one game under his belt as a programmer.
Sure, there's no history of that at all with Japanese studios. Just handing
they
games
never
over.
bury their talent and give credit to older developers who haven't actually done anything on it.
What a dream.
Listen to our Silent Hill episode with it was Sato, the CG designer for Silent Hill. Same story, where he actually threatened Konami and was like, "You gotta put me on a high profile project, or I'm gonna stop doing work for all these older guys who don't know what they're doing.
Or I'm gonna frickin' lose it."
Now, just a quick aside about Itagaki. In an interview with the website oneup.com in 2005, throwback, he listed that his 5 favorite games are Pikmin, Ocarina of Time, Image Fight, Dragon Quest II, and Chibi Robo. He listed his 5 least favorite games as well. They are Tekken 1, Tekken 2, Tekken 3, Tekken 4, and Tekken 5.
What a legend.
Though he has
Dude, this man is a 100% certified hater. What the hell?
He has those big tubs of haterade. He splashes himself with haterade when the game is over.
It's the fucking meme from Marriage Story where it's like, every morning I wake up and I hate Tekken.
Though he has professed to enjoying Tekken 1 through 3 somewhat at the time of their release, he had the following to say about 5 in this same 1UP interview.
I don't think it even needs saying, but people should stay away from Tekken. Nothing left to say. I just don't want them to disappoint me anymore. It's so annoying. Please don't annoy me anymore.
Oh my god. His 5 favorite games are like so wholesome though. They're like just the most like
Pikmin and Chibi Robo? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that your Pikmin die, but I mean, like, you
That's
know.
actually
those deathless runs. If
Yeah, I
a
was gonna
Pikmin dies, he starts over.
You got to keep him alive.
Oh, shit.
Or maybe it's possible he just plays Pikmin to kill the Pikmin.
I could see that.
He's like, I love Pikmin, only problem, no katanas. Let me put a katana in that.
No boobs. No boobs on the Pikmin. Why don't they make
the
a Pikmin with
have
boobs?
Tits? Why don't little tits grow out of the ground and you yank on the tit to pull the Pikmin out?
Is that not what Pikmin's about? I've never played it.
They each have leaves on their as their tips.
It's extremely pornographic. It's a very, very disturbing game. The team put together for Itagaki was named Team Ninja, perhaps named after Ninja Gaiden, the game series that kept Tecmo most relevant through the NES years, and whose star Ryo Hayabusa would be included in the Dead or Alive roster. Team Ninja likely had no idea the impact they would have on the fighting and action genres in the years to come, as they were just cobbled together by a company in survival mode. And this project really was vital to Tecmo's survival. The title of the game actually references the dire straits that the company was in. The game fails, and they are dead. It succeeds, and they are alive. The directive from the company: make a game like Virtua Fighter, since people seem to like these fighting games these days.
Oh, I guess that fighting game genre is it's not just a fad. Maybe we should make one of those.
Just lackadaisically walking in like, oh, you guys like fighting games? I guess we can make one. We'll shit one of these out. We're not going to make an extremely influential series or anything. We just got to make some money.
It's not a bad game idea, but it's nothing close to what was the Naughty Dog back when they were like I forget the original team name, but when they made the like apartment fighter where they're like fighting with brooms and skillets or whatnot. There was a game.
You made that up. That was an idea we had to make a game. They just made a Mortal Kombat ripoff. We thought that'd be cool.
Okay, great. Well, when we're dead or alive, that'll be the game that saves us.
That's a stunning purple. That's a stunning purple's original, man.
You gotta trademark. Patent pending.
Just real quick, it's Ryu, it's Hayabusa, not Hayabusa.
Oh,
Yeah,
Hayabusa.
you plebe.
Yeah.
Come on.
There's an A there. It's Hayabusa.
Hayabusa. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Cameron's
everyone.
just like-
I'm not going back to re-record it.
Cameron, can you just
you're good.
slide those glasses further up your nose and say actually?
Yeah, hold on. Wait, let me get my. Hold on. The listeners aren't going to be able to see this, but I'm going to get
ponytail's up.
my Itagaki on.
Oh, it's down.
Oh, we got a real Itagaki over here.
Oh my god, he looks just like him, folks.
There we go. Now I'm Tomonobu Itagaki.
Itagaki, can you justify the extensive fan service in the anime Kill La Kill?
Yes.
You heard it here, folks. Now, the timeline here gets a little muddy, so I'm just going to give the facts to start. Virtua Fighter 1 and 2 run on the Sega Model 2 arcade board, and so does Dead or Alive. DOA is the first non-Sega title to run on the Model 2 hardware, and was unveiled in February of 1996 to announce that fact. This is essentially the first time that Sega hinted at their future as a third-party style company, rather than one making proprietary software for solely their own games. Now, between Virtua Fighter 2 releasing in 1994 and Dead or Alive's unveiling, there must have been some deals between Sega and Tecmo going on in the background to secure the engine. How much work was done on DOA prior to this is really anyone's guess. I do believe they were working on the game prior to securing the engine, but it's a little muddy again. We know for sure that DOA was released in November of 1996 in Japan, which would put development at least around a year. And by that first reveal, I'm sure the design ethos of the title had already been firmly established. Violence and sexuality. Itagaki was a fan of Virtua Fighter, but made the call to up the number of eyes drawn to the title by appealing to, frankly, a lower common denominator. Thus was born the jiggle physics. Ah yes, the bane of the 3D fighter, and the reason we were all scared for our parents to walk in as we were playing video games. Jiggle, or just breast physics, referred to the breasts of a character model not being fixated on the skeleton frame, but bouncing either as a solid uniboob or separately. Depends on the outfit, of course. And Dead or Alive's 3 or 4, depending on the version of the game, female characters had the jiggle in spades. And goddammit, it looks like it hurts. The uniboob bounces up to their chin and down to their belly button at the slightest movement.
I was honestly surprised to see that they had jiggle physics in this one. I thought it was something that started with the later games, like the ones that I played, 2 or 3. So,
yeah, I really thought it would be more of
good job, I guess,
Lara Croft style chest, but instead it really is just floppy water balloons just going wild.
But it's like one long water balloon, because they haven't hit a point where it's like the two are moving independently. It's like this, the only thing I can describe it as is like a tube that's like affixed to the front of the character model that goes like up and down. It's like if you had a big like comic book or video game switch, you know, the time that the character has to grab with both hands and then like pull down and then pull back up. It's like that, but every time they take a single step forward or punch once, and it just goes wah 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 up and down.
You make it sound like a Mario Party mini game.
We got to put that in Mario Party 12, y'all. Someone contact Nintendo. We've got a great idea for the next Pikmin.
We're gonna revolutionize Nintendo, y'all.
Itagaki does foreshadowing. He moves to a Nintendo exclusive later on. Can't wait to talk about it. Now, I don't want to get lost in editorializing, but in 2024, the jiggle physics are sort of embarrassing. This is not to say that I'm some sort of puritanical, hand-wringing conservative begging for people to think of the children. Rather, I just think it looks kind of bad and distracts from the game that's on display. I will go out of my way to justify the fan service in Kill La Kill, or look the other way when folks complain about outfits that get smaller and skimpier on Soul Calibur characters. But with the benefit of hindsight, the breast physics in Dead or Alive 1 fall directly into the uncanny valley of titillation.
Yes, and no one call Tyler a hand-wringing conservative. He is absolutely a puritanical, hand-wringing liberal. If you can find a way to make the skimpy outfits or boob physics, whatever you really want to call it here, just the if you can find some way to build titillation into the narrative, I'm really not against it. I'm willing to accept the character of Quiet in Metal Gear Solid 5, despite being like an abject joke. Kill La Kill's a great example. Have you guys seen the stuff about like the nude outfit in Stellar Blade?
Yes,
I have.
Yes, where it's like, oh, okay, like yeah, if you want to be rock hard playing this game, you're gonna have not only the added difficulty of being aroused, but you're also gonna have the game be harder. These are good things to have, in my opinion.
It gets harder as you do.
It's the back of the box quote.
You need to be in marketing, my friend.
But I'm serious though. It only made me want to get that game even more. I'm like, I'm absolutely gonna find a way to get this game now. Stellar Blade looks awesome.
It does look awesome. Yeah.
Cameron, I trust you more when you have sunglasses on. I don't know what it is, but when you talk,
Well,
I'm more drawn to listen. You look like a cool guy. Do you want to go like smoke cigarettes behind a dumpster later?
Sure. No joke though. Whenever Gar and I go to KomoriCon, which is like the anime convention up here, if I'm in a cosplay that has sunglasses, more people ask to take pictures with me. It's kind of ridiculous. Like if I have a cosplay that doesn't have anything cover my eyes, like I'll get like a couple hits here or there. But the one year I cosplayed as Scar from Full Metal Alchemist, and that was I think maybe the most I've ever been asked for photos, as well as Dopo Kunakita from Bungo Stray Dogs, because that one just had like regular glasses, but I still got we still got stopped a lot for that. Because, I don't know what it is. Maybe I should just not show my eyes.
You're not the only one to understand this. Cops also famously wear sunglasses.
It does make me want to film them. All that said, it probably helped the game. Like, the game series probably succeeded because of the tube-shaped growth on all the women characters' chests. So what the fuck do I know? It's probably the reason the game succeeded. Now, the violence of all this refers to the danger zones, or the explosive areas on the outside edges of the fighting ring. Compare DOA to the competition. Virtua Fighter is a standard fighter done in 3D, a sausage fest of basic attacks. Tekken is a methodical game based in real-world martial arts, mostly grounded in its design. Now here comes the big swinging dick of Dead or Alive, bouncing tits and exploding bodies up in the air for juggle combos. It's not only the Mountain Dew of the 3D fighter, it's the Mountain Dew Code Red that Itagaki drinks and pisses all over the Mishima family.
It would look like blood.
It's just like, no, I don't need to go see a doctor. It's just Mountain Dew.
I've just
Code
been
Red.
drinking a lot of Code Red.
I don't know why I'm showing my pee to other people to like have this opinion, but don't worry about it, bro.
I inject Code Red for the caffeine high. That said what? What am I that setting to?
That said, Mountain Dew Code Red is a real nutritional feast.
Thanks for the money, Mountain Dew Code Red. Mountain Dew Code Red. They have not paid us. No one has. That said, Tecmo didn't skimp on production. All the moves in the game are motion captured by actual martial artists and actors, which wasn't utilized for that many games in 1996. The game looks pretty great for its time, and the arcade version included visual flair previously unseen in 3D fighters, like a rooftop and wooden bridge that shift around in the wind. The moves were quick and the action frenetic despite the third dimension. I really wouldn't hesitate to say that it was the fastest and smoothest 3D fighter upon its arcade release worldwide in November 26th of 1996. Now, there were some rumors of an N64 version, but the initial port came out only in Japan for only the Sega Saturn on October 9th, 1997, which actually makes sense when you think about it. The game is running on Sega hardware. Still, this version ended up with lower polygon counts, and those nice background details got removed. However, this was the first version to add additional modes, likely influenced by Tekken 2, as most of the modes are really just direct rips of Tekken 2's additional modes. And it also has more unlockables, like costumes, of course, which would become a series mainstay, and the ability to play as the final boss. But after all that, we finally end up at the PS1 version, released in March of 1998 in Japan and the US, and then in July of that same year in Europe. This version is notable mostly as the first game designed for Sega hardware to then be ported to the Sony PlayStation. As such, both the graphic and fighting engines are slightly revamped. More costumes were included, of course, as well as 2 additional characters, Ayane and Bass Armstrong. Bass Armstrong? Mr. Armstrong. Weirdly, it ditched the character-specific and text-only endings, opting to just shoot you to the credits upon finishing the arcade mode. Couldn't find a reason why. I tried to look into why and it's never really been translated either. It just was the Japanese Saturn release had these endings, and then the English version on PlayStation didn't. It just ends. There is no story.
The jiggle physics just took up way too much memory. They had to cut something.
And they cut the jiggle physics? No, you wouldn't. You would cut the story, of course.
It makes the most sense.
No one's playing this game for the story. I said that like I was sarcastic, but no one is playing this game for the story.
That is correct.
Then completing the circle, the PlayStation version was then itself reworked into an arcade release in Japan on October 16th, 1998, which is my 8th birthday. This version now runs on a completely different arcade board, having more in common with the Capcom ZN1 board than anything by Sega. Fans tend to view this as the best version of the game, being kind of a half step between the first and second games. Alright, the final version of the game was actually a port of the Saturn version, retrofitted to run natively on the OG Xbox as part of the Dead or Alive Ultimate Collection, released in 2004. Cameron, when you were talking earlier, I think this is what you had.
You're right, I think this is it.
So you just didn't touch the first one. You were like, nah, fuck that. We're jumping to...
Yeah, well, because I think he had... my friend who brought this over, he must have brought this double pack, but also Dead or Alive 3. Because the ones I remember playing were 2 and 3 for sure. But yeah, I don't think I touched the first one until now.
He was like, we're not playing the first game. They haven't individualized the breasts on the jiggle physics yet. It moves as one, and I can't get hard to that.
He was like, I actually do play this for the story, and they don't have the individual endings.
It's not really dead or alive in the first one. It's more like mastectomy or alive.
Now, you may be wondering.
I know.
Why the Saturn version on the Xbox? I had no way to transition that one. But why the Saturn version on the Xbox? There's no other reason other than it's Itagaki's favorite of all the versions, which, knowing him, just kind of tracks. Now, Dead or Alive's original arcade release did that Japanese game credits thing where most folks are given a pseudonym. Itagaki uses his own name, but examples include folks like programmer Hiroaki Ozawa going by just D, the letter D, or chief motion designer Yasuo Egawa going by Great Egawa. Many of the same staff. That's
kind of dope.
I kind of like that. I would like to be called the Great Kubat.
That's a good name.
Can you guys do that for the rest of
you
the
got it. It's
series? Many of the same staff would go on to work on the PS1 version, and in doing so would instead be credited as their real names. It's possible that we wouldn't know some of the staff's real names if it wasn't ported later on. It was right around this mid-90s, especially as the home markets were taking off in the 3D space, that folks started to actually credit themselves. However, one weird name stands out to me. The scenario writer, the reason we play the games for the story, being named simply Asamin. Now, not to get too Pepe Silvia on this, but who in the ever-loving fuck is Asamin? It's not like it's important. The story of Dead or Alive is disposable at best, but someone is credited as a writer for this thing, and they are also credited on the 1996 all-female 2D fighter Toki Gensho Angel Eyes, also released by Tecmo in the arcade. But for this, they are listed as a designer. And I tell you, there is nothing on this person online. My best guess is that it's someone already on the design staff for DOA, perhaps Itagaki himself, who can't get credited for some reason. Or perhaps it's a conglomerate of everyone who worked on it. But on the English-speaking web, there is no way to figure out who this person is, and I don't know why, but it drives me fucking crazy.
I couldn't tell.
I am so excited for the episodes that we're gonna get into where we start like uncovering real dark history to this 90s era of gaming, and we're gonna get to the core of Asamin is in fact Lalelulelo.
Lalelulelo.
I think he's actually the Zodiac killer, and that's why he couldn't reveal himself. He would fly to America, do murders years prior.
And then he flew back to Japan. It makes perfect sense.
I gotta go write the stories for 2 mediocre fighting games. But adding to this, on the English page for Tecmo's old official website for Dead or Alive 1, one of Kasumi's hobbies was listed as playing Angel Eyes, referencing the only other game that Asamin ever worked on. Now, what's fucking weird is that the English page mentions this, despite Angel Eyes never releasing outside of Japan, meaning that somehow this detail was still important enough to stay through the translation process, which in the mid-90s was also famous for totally removing anything that would be not understood by American audiences. See Pokemon replacing the rice balls and calling them donuts.
Or anything to do with the Blade Runner release.
Or the Ace Attorney series was reset in Los Angeles for America, and they've been trying to rectify that ever since. It's still part of the American release, even though it's so clearly Japan. All that said, you can still find this website through the Internet Archive, so you can see, as I did, with your own eyes, that Kasumi lists playing Angel Eyes as one of her hobbies. Why? Who is Asamin? What are they hiding? I'm broken by this.
I think if we can go back and we can find an arcade in central Tokyo that has, in fact, Toki Densho Angel Eyes, and we compete to get on that leaderboard, we might find 6 letters on the number 1 slot in that game, Asamin, and that itself might be the hint we need to get to the core identity of who is Asamin. Tyler, I'm going to be thinking about this all night.
I mean, but it's gotta be Itagaki, right? Like, it's gotta be.
It's probably, but Itagaki isn't credited on Angel Eyes. But again, we talked about he had to have been doing something.
Yeah.
And we don't, I think, know what his pseudonym is for those early 90s games, whatever he worked on. I wasn't able to locate it anyway.
Wait a second.
I don't know.
Wait a second. What if it's his muse, his inspiration, his spark, his daughter?
Oh, dude.
Tell me that's not plausible.
That's how we justify that his young child is the inspiration for the heaving breast games. She wrote them.
She wrote them.
Which, again, not to shit on the series too much, but the stories in the later games could have been written by a child, so there you go. Dead or Alive was received well enough, specifically regarding the hold mechanic that we'll go into when we talk about gameplay. Some reviewers criticized the breast physics, with one person unfavorably comparing them to the more realistic breast physics in Fighting Vipers. Great. The PS1 version of Dead or Alive was a bit better received than the Saturn port. Sales on the PS1 across regions are estimated to be a bit over 250,000. Successful, but not necessarily the sweeping victory of something like the Tekken series. It's not in that list of the 100 top-selling PS1 games. Still, folks who wanted a fast-paced 3D fighter with a great sense of push and pull rated it highly. And regardless, the sales were solid enough, even just in the arcades, so 2 years prior, to keep Tecmo afloat, and made Itagaki their star child for a bit over a decade. And this, like Tekken 1 and 2, has been majorly overshadowed by the games that followed it. So, let's talk about how we feel about it today. I don't like it very much.
I don't really have too much more to add. When I picked it up, I was very quickly addicted to it. I wanted to win. I enjoyed the fighting. However, I guess the way to really think about it is I was pretty taken aback listening to our episode on Tekken 2 and being reminded of the fact that all of the face buttons on the controller correlate to a limb. And so that was what I was anticipating here. And so I was really, really thrown, especially because, and I don't really know why I'm like this, but square was like the immediate like button I wanted to press. Like I was pressing square in like the 3, 2, 1 countdown or whatever it is. But square is grab and or hold, I guess. And I would consistently be like, as Kasumi, I would be like, like always going to grab, but never holding it really long enough to actually like follow through on it. And then I'd be reminded, no, you got to switch to a different button. And then I wouldn't really know, like, 'cause you get these like, you know, like quick jabs with, I think, triangle and X, and circle, I think, is kick. And then R2, L1, L2, R1 all have their variety of actions that don't really seem to have any rhyme or reason for being what they are. For being such like a fluid fighter, I thought that the game was suspiciously like obtuse when it came to its controller layout. I figured it out eventually, and that was fun, which is really all I'm looking for at the end of the day for a game I'm going to spend a limited amount of time with. But yeah, that was kind of my feelings on it.
The shoulder buttons are all combinations of different button presses. So like L2 is punch and kick at once. So they don't necessarily correspond to one move per se, because it's also going to vary based on characters. But Dead or Alive, its moveset confuses me because buttons are also situational. So hold can mean different things depending on if you're using it offensively or defensively, along with the direction that you're moving the stick in. And that's not like weird. Soul Calibur only has 3 buttons as well, and everything is based on the direction you're moving the stick in. But I just never felt like I knew exactly what I was going to do if I hit a button in Dead or Alive, especially those shoulder buttons, where I would find things that it's like, okay, upright plus R2 does a move that is good. I'm going to keep using that move. But I also felt like the way the stick would lay out, like it wouldn't always, like some of those moves would do like a down attack, like would attack someone's knees or, you know, below their shins or whatever. But I wasn't pressing down to do that. You know, I guess when I talk about how I didn't really like the game feel, when I execute a move in Tekken, for reasons I can't totally explain, it makes sense that that move correlates with that button combination. So even when I'm kind of button mashing, it's like, well, I know if I go back left and then hit square that I'm probably going to back up a little bit and go low. And I just didn't ever feel that with Dead or Alive.
I fully sympathize with this argument. And I actually have a good, I think, corollary for what I want to make a point on when it comes to Dead or Alive. And it's the fact that if I were to think of Tekken sort of like Dark Souls and Dead or Alive as Bloodborne, where Bloodborne has these core changes to the Dark Souls gameplay that forces you out of the defensive stance and rewards you for being more aggressive. And so you do have to kind of switch your mindset when playing a game with, for all accounts, basically the same controller setup. And in Dead or Alive, I found that my defensive posturing, which is how I got through most of the fights that I did do in Tekken 2, I was being punished for playing that way. And I was much more effective when I learned about countering and being quick on the draw, quick enough at least for, a PlayStation 1 game, to counter my opponent's move, for them to counter me, and then for me to counter them back. You joked about this at the beginning, but playing that kind of aggressive style, not just button mashing, but finding that rhythm, it worked for me, is what I'll say.
That hold mechanic is, I feel, very, very important. Like, you cannot underestimate that, or you can't just ignore that. It's like such a core mechanic of, that push, pull, rock, paper, scissors gameplay. But I feel like of the rock, paper, scissors, when it comes to that, it's definitely more important. Like, say the holding is rock, it's definitely more important than paper or scissors. And this is only coming from my experience with it, because I played, not this one, but when going back to when I played Dead or Alive 2 or 3, going against someone who was really good at it, like that hold mechanic, that counter mechanic was basically what kept him winning and what kept holding me back, because he like Jacob was saying, like, he was very aggressive. Like, he would go all out, and I would block, but then the moment I thought I saw an opening, I would go to strike, and then he would just counter me and turn it into a throw, and then like unleash upon me again. So seeing someone, I don't know how high of a level of gameplay that is, but that mechanic is very important. But I also, like, I think, Tyler, what you were saying with comparing it to Tekken 2, I think this game is very complimentary of the Virtua Fighter series, because that game mechanically is also kind of tough to get into as well. When you were talking about how some of the moves don't make sense, like, pushing a button would for some reason make somebody strike low rather than like your standard up punch. I think it depends on the characters, because with the Virtua Fighter series, there's different character difficulties. Like, some of them you can easily combo into others. Others you have to be a little bit more technical, where you have to put the directional inputs along with the attack buttons. So you'll be striking low when you want to strike low, striking mid when you want to strike mid, striking high when you want to strike high. But then there are characters who are of the more easy difficulty, where it kind of does that for you. And I can see why it would definitely make it, for a certain player, it definitely makes more sense to them. But I can also see why, for someone who wants to be more technical, why it would not make sense to them at all when you want to have that much more control over your character in a fighting game.
I do really appreciate the concept of what Dead or Alive is trying to set up, and I would be interested to try later entries in the series. Specifically, it seems like 2 and 3 are very well regarded, because I really like the idea of getting in that like kung fu movie punch but grab, spin, but your counter is countered. And it's we haven't said it out loud, but it's called the triangle system, where throws beat holds, holds beat strikes, and strikes beat throws, though there are occasionally exceptions to that. But if you see a punch coming and you're able to execute the hold in time properly, you can spin someone around. But just because they've become spun around doesn't mean that there's any sort of delay in their attack. They can immediately try punching again, which means you can immediately hold again. There's so little frame. There's a very small amount of frames between the execution of moves, holds, throws, etc. The only probably exception to that being the kind of throws where it sends you into a canned animation, like Tina and Bass or Bass, whatever his name is, the wrestler moves, who are grapple heavier, will occasionally sort of pause the action for a second as it executes. They'll do a pile driver, a full Nelson, or whatever the fuck.
Let's sell this right now. Bass Armstrong is a stronger name than Bass Armstrong.
I like a nice bass with a nice ass. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with that.
We always knew that about you.
We gotta have something for the ladies, y'all. I didn't like that. I didn't like saying that. Another thing we should mention about the holds, though, there are two kinds of holds. There's an offensive hold, which is when you press square as an attack is about to strike you, but press it along with additional button combinations, whereas a defensive hold is executed by pressing square only while being attacked, which really just rebuffs the attack to move the opponent away. So I had trouble. I read about this in manuals and facts and stuff, but I couldn't really figure out what the exact difference was between an offensive and defensive hold. And I think that's another thing that becomes de-emphasized as the series goes along, and it really is just about the triangle system. But I do like the idea that combos can be easily broken, because it's very easy in something like Tekken to get trapped in the famous 10-hit combo. If the opponent knows what they're doing, you can essentially get stun locked. That really can't happen in Dead or Alive, and so high level play has got to look pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, but why my probably top 5 least favorite games are Tekken 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
That's understandable. Don't bother me anymore. Please don't annoy me.
But you've had some fun with Tekken's 1, 2, and 3 though, just a little bit, right?
I probably have had some fun with 1, 2, and 3, and if I'm speaking from a real personal a level, Tekken Dark Resurrection, maybe.
Fuck yeah.
Maybe the whole series. Maybe I really like the whole series, but I like the first 3 just enough to record a 2-hour podcast about them. Also worth noting is the danger zones, which we touched on earlier, but it adds a pretty intense dimension to the game where I think it's designed to make sure you can't back off from an opponent and play a distance game. I don't think there's any distance moves in Dead or Alive. There's certainly no fireballs. It's about specifically close hand-to-hand stuff. But if you end up outside that danger zone and get hit, you're done. Like the match you can come back from it, and there is a way to prevent the bouncing by pressing all 3 buttons right before you land in what's known as an ukemi stance, I think. But otherwise, you're fucked if you bounce on the bombs.
Yeah, I know.
Anything else we want to say about the basic mechanics of the game?
No, not really.
It's very simple. And I think that
it's not only simple, it's not even deceptively simple. It's really easy to grasp. It's a great game, I think, to if you're a newcomer to the fighting genre, which whenever you're returning to a genre, it's like I used to say all the time, and I don't think that this is true, but I used to say that it's much harder to relearn how to ride a bike than it is to learn how to ride a bike for the very first time. And sometimes going back to fighting games, like that sort of feels like what I'm doing, like I'm relearning a skill like I once had. And coming to Dead or Alive just felt easy in a way. Not to say that I crushed. In fact, when we played Tekken 2 together, I think I crushed more levels in a row than I did with Dead or Alive. But just the flow of play felt easier for me to grasp.
It, to me, has more of an arcade feel. Like, it does remind me more of, like, a Street Fighter. Whereas Tekken and Soul Calibur, I feel like, exist very much in their own 3D game fighting space. Whereas... Dead or Alive feels closer to something that's 2D.
Yeah.
That's it. Is boobs and violence. Let's talk modes. So the basic mode is Tournament, which is just an arcade mode, and at the end of it in the PlayStation version, you fight Ayane and the last boss, which is Raido, I think is how his name is pronounced. In Japanese versions, you get some scrolling text wrapping up the character's story, and in other regions, you get nothing.
Yeah, fuck you, Brazil.
Specifically.
Go play your Zeebo. There is Time Attack, which is a tournament with a timer, which is just definitely from Tekken 2, because that's the same thing. There's Danger Zone mode, where the whole ring is the danger zone.
What?
There is no safe zone, which this was fun. I did play this for a bit. I liked it. There's a Versus, which is just 2-player survival. You fight until you die. Winning battles restores a little bit of energy. The most purely original mode they have is called Kumite mode, which you fight 100 comm players. You restore energy between fights, which does make it a little bit different than survival, even though you do restore some energy in survival, but Kumite is specifically 100. Anyway, it's kind of a cross between survival and Time Attack. You go for the highest score and the quickest time to beat 100 opponents, which I never beat one. I don't know if it was harder, but I did not beat a single person.
Oh, no.
There's Team Battle, where you pick 5 fighters. Your opponent also picks 5, and each round you swap to the next fighter when you die. Again, Tekken 2 has this. And then there's the training mode, which is training, and your opponent doesn't attack.
You know what kind of mode I would love? I don't want a whole game based around this, but just like add it in as one of these alternative modes where you go in, whether it's couch co-op or online, you pick your character, you pick your map. They meet up, but then the other player isn't there. So you get the whole time and you map out your movement, right, as your character. You basically program what your character is going to do, independent of what the other player does. Meanwhile, the other player programs what their character will do on that map. And then you basically just let the game play, and then you watch to see how they interact with one another. It would not be all that dissimilar from you two doing a cappella on this podcast.
That sounds it sounds so chaotic, but I would be 100% down for something.
I think
like
it'd
that.
be like it would be like a QWOP phenomenon, right? Like it would be a let's play kind of game style that you would do.
I genuinely think there might be something there, because there's the mind game to it too, where it's like if you give them a limited enough move set, then it's all about planning, like, if this leads to this, then I would do this. So I'm predicting what they're going to do based on what I know. I think there might genuinely be something there.
This is Cosmic Brain, guys.
Along with House Invader, the game that we falsely attributed to Naughty Dog, this has been another stunning purple design.
Wow, look at
that.
Wow, look at that. We're going to design the next big fighting games. We're coming for you.
We're changing the gaming landscape. We just don't know it yet.
You think this is just a podcast we're doing? Oh, think again.
People are going to do podcasts about us.
Can't wait.
In their hollow cubes in 20 years with their cube casts. I don't know why the future to me is all cubes. I believe in the GameCube future that we were once gunning for 20 years ago.
It would be better.
All right, the plot that I freaked out about so much earlier. Everybody get ready for Shakespeare. The DOA Tech, which is the Dead or Alive Tournament Executive Committee, hosts a fighting tournament called the Dead or Alive World Combat Championship. Kasumi enters the tournament to get revenge on her uncle Raido, who wounded her brother Hayate. Kasumi should have taken over as the next leader of the Mugen Tenshin Ninja clan, but sought revenge instead. So why does Raido enter the tournament? Who cares? Everybody fights. She kills Raido, but her leaving the village without permission means that she is banished from the clan and sentenced to death when they catch her. I'm not as familiar with the continuing plot of Dead or Alive as I am with Tekken, so I don't have the rambling tirade to go on this time, but just a glance into the game's plot shows that it immediately goes pretty much off the rails and involves evil Tengu, clones, and amnesiacs. And that's just the second game, so I'm sure it's all very interesting. I just have no history with it. Write in and tell us why you love the Dead or Alive story, maybe. Like, comment, and subscribe.
I gotta say, the Dead or Alive World Combat Championship is a pale imitation of the King of Iron Fist tournament.
No way, Itagaki, he came up with that on his own.
King of Iron Fist. I think about it. I say it sometimes to myself just for the mouthfeel.
Yeah, you really get it in there. You get that King of Iron Fist.
I chew on it. It's a thick word.
You can't do anything with Dead or Alive World Combat Championship.
That's a cuck name for a cuck tournament.
We're going to get blackballed by Itagaki.
He's going to stab us with his katanas. He'll direct his daughter to stab us. Asamin, go destroy them.
No, that's a plot of a movie.
Awesome.
Summon the Asamin. There are 3 American young men, and they must be dealt with.
And then when she thinks she has us on the ropes, when we're like covered in our own blood, just on the ground, she's gonna raise her katana for the final blow, and that's when I hold my hand out, and I'm just gonna be like, "But I loved Toki Densho Angel Eyes," and then she slowly lowers it, and she'll be all like, "Wait, you've played that game?" And I'll be like, "Yes, it was my favorite."
You could look at her and say Angel Eyes, and she'll look at you all serious like and be like, "How do you know that name? Who told you about it?"
And then you use square to reverse it and steal the katana, and you cut the child in half.
Yes.
I also realized it's been like 25 years since she would have been a kid, but to me, she's been a child the whole time.
There's something there, but I don't want to touch it.
I would say it is true. Kasumi is the series mascot. She's the redheaded ninja girl. Her brother was the next in line for the 18th master of the Mugen Tenjin Academy until he was left debilitated by an assassin, so she went out for revenge. I love that they have to specify that it's the 18th master of the Mugen Tenjin. See, that's the kind of world building that you only get with an Asamin joint. Really. Kasumi's outfit is pretty iconic. It's a blue dress that ties around her waist, which shows a lot of thigh cleavage and regular cleavage. And
thigh cleavage is the best.
And it's just her name on the back of the dress, that kanji character. She was designed to appear, quote-unquote, soft, which is somehow supposed to be symbolic of the series compared as a whole to Ninja Gaiden, which I assume is hard.
Got it.
By the way, Kasumi is not 18. Her age is purposefully withheld from Western markets because she was not 18 until Dead or Alive 4. For the other 3 series, she is probably just 15, maybe 16. So, congrats, everyone. I hope you feel gross.
And the Extreme Beach Volleyball games came out before Dead or Alive 4.
They sure did.
I'm taking so many pictures.
Wait, hold on.
Straight to your dad's hard drive. Isn't your dad a cop?
No, he's retired. It's okay. I think it's fine. I think we'll be fine. It's fine.
So, wait, is her 18th birthday a part of the plot in Dead or Alive 4?
Maybe. And actually, after that, everybody online celebrates, and they start showing all the upskirt pictures that they take on her 18th birthday, just like every young starlet in Hollywood. I'm sorry, every woman ever.
Every women
ever. Quote, put that on my tombstone. I'm sorry, every women ever.
I'm just letting you guys all know now, though, like listeners out there, we're recording this while it's like, isn't this like Women's History Month too?
Cameron eyes Women's History Month because I recognize
I'm a
women
man
every day. That's
every month.
I go, that's one. There's another one. I recognize them. The kanji used to spell Kasumi, I'm getting us back on track, also means mist, perhaps representing her loneliness in her exile. She is shown surrounded by mist in the opening cutscene, while totally nude, perhaps to highlight this. Gameplay-wise, she's a fast character with weaker hits in general. That's Kasumi, everybody.
In a nutshell.
In an underage nutshell. There is Jan Lee, who is the signature Bruce Lee analog. He's either a bodyguard or a bouncer, I can't tell which, and does the standard, I just want to be the strongest man in the universe thing. He's the fastest striking character with only a few throws. Then there is Lei Fang, I think it's Lei, a hard-headed college student with traditional Chinese garb. She enters the tournament to prove that she don't need no man. Basically, actually, after someone rescues her one time, she's like, I don't need rescuing, I'm gonna win a fighting tournament. Lei Fang focuses on holds and parries for counterattacks, so she's a defensive fighter. There's Bayman, a beefy Russian assassin that loves beef stew. He enters the tournament to kill Fame Douglas, who I didn't mention earlier is the man who runs the tournament. He's our Zangief-style grappler with hard hits, but no combos.
Is Bayman the fighter of the Nightman?
Aha. He is the champion of the sun. It's true.
Okay, thank you. I just needed to know.
That's our second Always Sunny reference.
Today?
We're knocking him out. Yeah, I said Pepe Silvia earlier.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, shit, yeah.
All right, let's see if we can go for 3.
I got boxes full of Asamin. This is the worst one yet.
This is the episode people are going to stop listening.
My parents are going to be so disappointed. There's Tina characters. Tina is the blonde babe professional wrestler who wants to get discovered in Hollywood, baby. She's slower than all the other female characters, but more balanced, good with throws, and fun fact, she loves laser tag.
Oh, that's cute.
But now we get to Ryu Hayabusa. You know him, you love him. It's the ninja of Ninja Gaiden himself, baby. Now, I think we should note
Let's go.
We should note that in the continuity of Ryu between Ninja Gaiden for the NES and the remake for the Xbox in conjunction with DOA is dubious. From what I understand, up through Dead or Alive 3, the original Ninja Gaiden games shared a canon with Dead or Alive 1, or 1, 2, and 3, making it the same Ryu. However, in the Ninja Gaiden reboot in 2004, also developed by Team Ninja and Itagaki, they retrofitted Dead or Alive 1 through 3, made the original Ninja Gaiden games non-canonical, and then did their own thing with the Ninja Gaiden reboot. Think Star Wars and its 2 canons, basically. He enters the tournament in both canons to find Kasumi, as Hayate is his best friend.
Aww.
This is the kind of information that fills my head instead of, like, you know, a valuable skill, math, science. I know about the Ninja Gaiden pair of continuities.
Well, to be fair, Ninja Gaiden's dope.
You know what? I played the first Ninja Gaiden for the NES, I think, last year. It was okay.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. It's
a classic for a reason,
definitely
but
not
I was like,
fair.
I don't like playing this anymore.
The original Ninja Gaiden is one of those games that I can just go back to and just pick up and play again. It's definitely unfair in the later parts of the game where there's a certain level, I think it's like level 6, stage 2 or something like that. Like once you hit that point, it gets like considerably harder. And if you lose to the final boss of the game, like of the entire game, which is like a few levels after that, you go back to that level, and it's fucking ridiculous.
Awesome. I have a lot of respect for that. I also just want to mock Cameron a little bit here because Tyler, your head might be filled with useless information like the Ryu Hayabusa 2 timeline continuity, but Cameron's head is filled with the correct pronunciation not only of Hayabusa but Ninja Gaiden. He hits the emphasis in everything correctly. He's not going to point it out, but if you're hearing it, you're hearing it.
He's going to subtly try and get you to pronounce it correctly, but not shame you about it.
Yeah, that's Cameron's whole thing.
I didn't even fucking realize I did it. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't even notice.
Ryu is generally considered to be the best character in the game from what I can tell, though he's harder to master. He has good strikes, holds, and throws, so it's kind of in line with the canon of him just being the ultimate ninja badass.
This is true.
There's Zack. He's a DJ. He's kind of the comic relief character. He's quick and has decent strength, and I have nothing else to say about him. There's Jen Fu, who is the prerequisite old man kung fu artist. He's the slowest character, but the one that hits the hardest. He was the one I could not beat in tournament mode. I did end up finishing tournament mode, but Genfu kicked my fucking ass every time.
For days he kicked my ass. I could not do it. When I finally was able to, like, he would, you know, it was just 2 hits, right? Like, he would win every single battle, and then finally he'd win one, and then I'd win one, and then he'd win the third one, and it was like that for like a solid 12 hours before. I mean, I didn't put that much time into the game, but you get the idea. It was brutal. It was brutal. Beating him was a victory.
You had a 12-hour jank sesh?
Bro, man. As you get older, you just really need to dedicate the time.
It's all about Genfu.
There's Bass Armstrong, who is Tina's dad, another wrestler, very slow grappler type. So Tina, but with her stats sort of excelled into the grappler dimension. There's also Ayane, who is, to me, the second most iconic character, third maybe to Ryu, which is why it's so surprising to me that she was only added in for the PS1 version as an unlockable character. Ayane is the other ninja who wears all purple. She's got the light purple bob cut. She is Raido's daughter, born of familial rape, which is really dark for this series. So the villain Raido rapes Kasumi and Hayate's mom, and then Ayane is born of that. So she is the cousin and half-sister of Hayate and Kasumi. She's another fast character, but hits harder than the other quick characters, making her essentially sort of a better Kasumi. She is sent to the tournament also to kill Kasumi. So she is the one who says, "We must respect the order of the Ninja Academy," and goes to stop our red-headed, thigh-cleavage, underage protagonist.
She's also in the Ninja Gaiden remake. She's the one in the beginning that gives you... She throws ninja stars at Ryu, and each of those ninja stars has like a note, which is basically teaching you how to play the game as she narrates over it. Just a nice little tidbit. Just she's in there. She's chilling.
I never played any of the remake Ninja Gaidens. Gaidens.
I highly recommend them. I said it, and I looked at Jacob's face, and he had his little smirk, like, he said it again. I highly recommend those games, though. Maybe
I hear they're great, but I hear they're quite difficult.
They are, but it's so much. It's
Tyler,
rewarding. It's the Dark Souls of action
I also
games.
was a big pussy and thought, it's too hard. I don't even want to try. I don't want to fail.
I'm scared. I'm gonna go play Animal Crossing.
There are moments where it also just feels super unfucking fair, though. So I will give you that. There are times where I'm like, this game has absolutely no fucking like difficulty balance at all, especially in the later stages.
And then the last character is Raidu. Anyway, he's the bad guy. He's a Nukanen, which is a missing shinobi. He's the one who disables Hayate and is killed by Kasumi at the end. He's technically unlockable, and all of his moves are copied from other characters. His story is kind of that he enters the tournament to fight a bunch of different people to learn their moves. So I will admit it's kind of neat that they tie in his story to his moveset. So the thought is that once you're fighting him at the end, he's beaten everyone that you've also beaten and learned from them, and so you're going against the moveset of everybody who you faced earlier in the game. Do we have anything else to say about Dead or Alive 1?
I got nothing.
I don't think so. So given that Dead or Alive essentially saved Tecmo, a sequel was more or less a given. After working on the updated Dead or Alive Plus Plus in 1998, Itagaki and Team Ninja released Dead or Alive 2 exactly a year later in arcades, which would make it my 9th birthday. This one would get home ports to the Dreamcast and the PS2, with then Dead or Alive 3 and 4 becoming exclusives for the original Xbox and the Xbox 360 respectively, and then would also skip arcades. So even though this game premiered in arcades and was sort of, to me, a very arcadey kind of fighter, eventually it would go home console exclusive way before any other fighting series at the time would do so.
Wild. Before we go too much further, I did want to note, while we're talking about when it was released, do you guys know what movie was at the top of the box office when this game came out in late March of 1998? And I'll give you a hint, but I will tell you, this hint should give it away for y'all.
Hold on. I do want to... March? I don't know.
All right. I'm going to give you this hint. Okay. All right. So...
Godzilla. The American Godzilla.
I love where your mind's at, but here's the hint I'm going to give you. It was the 14th week of the same movie topping the box office that ultimately was on the top of the box office for 15 total weeks.
Is it just Titanic?
It's Titanic.
Titanic was my first thought, but I thought it was too obvious.
Oh, shit.
Damn.
Should have gone for it.
So for like most of the games in 98, the answer is just going to be Titanic. Or not most, but like
for late 97 and 98, yes. It will be Titanic. And then there will probably be like a period like 2 years later when they re-released Titanic where it continued to do gangbusters at the box office. Yeah, Titanic's a safe bet from now on.
At this point. During this time, not Titanic time, but during the time that Team Ninja is making the Dead or Alive series, they would also reboot the Ninja Gaiden series, but also for the Xbox. They're known for being excellent and gorgeous, but also viciously hard. The further the Dead or Alive series got, the more it became known for two things, and they are both boobs. This led to the release of Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball in 2003 for the Xbox, a cheesecake-filled romp through an island paradise. This, to me, firmly planted the series into something of a descent that it would never quite recover from in terms of being taken seriously, and its reputation has always been that of a lesser than to the Tekkens and the Virtua Fighters of the world. Itagaki was, as I'd mentioned, accused of sexual harassment by a female coworker in 2006. He was found innocent by a court, and an internal investigation determined that the relationship was consensual. However, it did result in a demotion for both he and the accuser. He would remain with Team Ninja through Dead or Alive 4, which he planned to be the last installment, and then he announced his leaving the company in 2008, just prior to the release of Ninja Gaiden 2. He also said at that time that he would be suing Tecmo for withheld bonuses and emotional distress. And the fact that he was a law student has begun to come together. He would then form his own company and publish the absolute tragedy that is Devil's Third. Not only a Wii U exclusive, but perhaps the worst game for the system, for the Wii U. Since this release in 2015, he has only been credited as an advisor on one game and as special thanks in 2 other games. His new company, called Apex Games, is currently working on a NFT game called Warrior.
Oh, God.
A generic title with non-fungible tokens. Fungible? Fungable?
Fungible. Gotta be. If it's not, I refuse to accept it.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
I know. Dead or Alive would release 6 numbered entries and 3 beach volleyball spin. I'm just now registering that there's half as many volleyball spin-offs as there are actual fighting games in this series. It is like a third of the releases are beach volleyball games.
They should have just committed. They should have just been like, you know what? I think we've done enough of the fighting games. Let's just go full on beach volleyball.
I have a feeling if they continue, that would be what they do.
If you really truly want to compare honestly the quality of the Tekken games to the Dead or Alive games on the rubric solely of beach volleyball, Dead or Alive wins handily.
Except the thing is, there is a beach volleyball minigame in Tekken 3 that might be better.
Wow, Itagaki, I went to bat for you, buddy, but there ain't nothing I can do now.
Tekken also has the better bowling minigames. Tekken Bowl.
Yo, that's right, they have bowling.
They got bowling. Tekken 7 has bowling. They better release that Tekken 8 DLC with bowling, or else I'm not buying it. Tekken would release 6 numbered entries, 3 beach volleyball spin-offs, and the aforementioned 3DS spin-off game. Dead or Alive 6 released in 2019 and is commonly seen as kind of a death knell for the series. While not terrible, it simply became outclassed by its contemporaries, and then launched a free-to-play version 2 weeks after the initial release of the full game. The most recent spin-off, Extreme 3, they dropped Extreme Beach Volleyball, they just call it Extreme now. Extreme 3 was also released in 2019, and the series has been essentially silent ever since.
Wow.
I do suppose it's worth mentioning that Dead or Alive was popular enough to receive a movie adaptation in 2006, starring Jamie Presley of My Name is Earl fame, Devin Aoki. Oh, I was way off. Devin Aoki and Eric Roberts. I've seen it, and for a B-movie riff on Enter the Dragon, bro, it could be a lot worse. It's bad, but it's a perfect movie for having a few drinks or a few little puffs of the jazz cabbage. I kind of liked it.
Honestly, with like the right crew, I would totally also do a podcast on just covering Eric Roberts' entire filmography, because it is not good.
Was he the guy on the OC, or am I mixing him up?
No, you're mixing him up. So in The Dark Knight, Batman at one point drops.
He's
Maroni.
He
drops Maroni and he like cracks his. Yeah, that's Eric Roberts.
Isn't he also Julia Roberts' like uncle or something?
Probably.
Like,
you want to talk about weird fucking like
uncle?
incestuous shit? Yeah, like Hollywood, bro.
They're brothers, or they're brother and sister.
Oh, what?
Like you're like, ew, gross. I was like, I didn't say they fucked. Okay, I was being hyperbolic.
Ew. They're related. Ew.
I don't like having family. That's gross.
Yeah, I'm not Fast and the Furious.
the Us Weekly headline is Julia Roberts and brother Eric Roberts' sibling relationship, a timeline of their alleged drama. Uh-oh.
That's awesome. Thank you, Us Weekly.
Except we were talking about movies. I guess it was on topic. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to say about the movie. I think it's kind of fun. I used to have a DVD of it that I got in college from a going out of business Blockbuster, and it was the Dead
Was this
or
one
Alive movie.
right across the way from school? In the on the corner. Yes. Oh, yes. That's where I got the Lord of the Rings theatrical edition trilogy on Blu-ray at that sale.
Oh.
Which now that I have the
That's where I
extended
got,
editions, I can watch my favorite combination of those movies. I'm done.
That was where I got Marvel vs. Capcom, which they were having like a blowout, and I got that for like $5, which was great.
Nice. Yeah, good
Right
deal.
on.
We're going to start a new segment here per Jacob's recommendation. We're going to start a recommendation corner where it's a little...
The recommendation corner.
Thank you. We're going to do that every time. So rather than recommend Dead or Alive or really any of these games, unless we genuinely... Like with Final Fantasy VII, I genuinely think there are versions of it to play that are now worth playing. Just go get it on modern consoles and play the OG game. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend going back and finding a Dead or Alive 1 disc. So we're going to go through and recommend what we would say either instead of this game or recommend the game itself. Personally, I would say to either just play the new Tekken games or really Soul Calibur. So I think Soul Calibur 6 is the most recent one. And Soul Calibur 6 has a specific button that you press that takes both characters into like a rock, paper, scissors mode where you either attack vertically, horizontally, or do a kick. And depending on, it has a kind of triangle system where each of those will beat another one of them, or you'll pick the same one and bounce off each other and go back into this sort of slow down triangle mode. And because of the Soul Calibur also only having essentially 3 buttons, I think it's the closest thing to Dead or Alive that we have. It's just more weapons-based. Every fighter has specifically weapons instead of fisticuffs, as they do in Dead or Alive. So that would be my recommendation. Soul Calibur 6 you can play on, I think, any modern console except Switch. So it's backwards compatible on PS5 and the updated Xboxes had released for PS4. Still looks pretty good for what it is.
As for me, I would recommend one of Team Ninja's newer outputs. I would go with Neo or Neo. I don't 100% know how it's pronounced. I have not played the second one yet. I'm working my way through the first one. I really, really, really like it. When we talked earlier about the way that the layout for the controls in Dead or Alive can help facilitate knowing, like, okay, I'm attacked like this. I think, Cameron, you mentioned this, where the layout will allow you to be like, okay, now you're attacking you're attacking up, you're attacking mid, you're attacking low. And that combat is basically really well supplanted from the fighting game dynamic, just 2v2 facing one another, into a 3D, action platformer in Nioh that makes a really engaging combat, really fluid combat, one that allows for a lot of different stances. It just makes it really dynamic and rewards aggression. And so I think Team Ninja's Nioh is a great, great, great follow-up to, if you like Dead or Alive, want something similar, still sexy, but more in the Last Samurai fashion, that's where I would go.
As for me, I mentioned earlier the Ninja Gaiden series, but I don't know if that's going to be like my recommendation. So the other one I can think of right now, only because it's also a fighting game and because I just started playing it again, is Guilty Gear Strive, which is the most recent. It's the most recent game in the series right now. I think it came out in like 2021, 2022. It's out for modern consoles. It's on Game Pass, so if you have Game Pass, you have this game, and it's similar to like Street Fighter, those kinds of games. It's made by Arc System Works, so if you've played a fighting game by Arc System Works, you know what you're getting into. So like something like Dragon Ball Fighters, or what's the other one that they did? Blaze Blue. Freaking wild, crazy, chaotic Japanese anime 2D fighter. It's great. It's a lot of fun. It's also very technical. So if you're into that, I also highly recommend it. I also want to point out that the story mode for this game is really just one long cutscene. So if you're going into it expecting that there's going to be some gameplay, there isn't. You're basically just watching a 3D anime at that point. There is no gameplay in the story mode, but just, sit back, get some popcorn, and enjoy the ride.
One of the newer, I think it's Blaze Blue, has a control mode that's basically press any button to win the game. So it's very distilled down, where rather than executing basic moves, like the buttons just execute combos or the more advanced moves. So even though those games aren't necessarily super accessible to beginners, that's a fun way to go about playing it. I've had a nice time.
Oh, and I think I should point out a unique characteristic that Guilty Gear has. I don't know if it applies to Strive, but it seems to be the case whenever I've executed it. But every character has a signature, like, special move. Like, you know how Ryu has, like, Shinku Hadouken for Street Fighter, but, like, every character in Guilty Gear has a special move that's basically an instant KO if you hit the enemy with it. So no matter how much health they have, how much health your opponent has, if you hit them with it, they're basically dead. And I think you can only do it once per match. So if you do it in round 1, I don't think you can do it again in the later
neat. I like that.
Rounds, unless you build up some sort of meter. But I think I think they limit the amount of times you can do it.
And I think there we have to cut off the recommendations before Kameron recommends every game he's ever played.
Yeah, so I'm also playing Alan Wake 2 right now.
So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So what's to make of the legacy of Dead or Alive? Below the tits and explosions, there is a competent fighting game. I read it as like a B-movie that has some talent behind the camera. It's a solid enough fighter for a snack, and if it's your favorite fighting game series, dear listener, please disregard my complaints. It's certainly not the trash 3D fighters that we're going to start seeing along our PlayStation 1 journey, but I don't think it rises up to match the competition either. Perhaps, like the rock star Itagaki tries so hard to be, under the glitz and the glamour is just a person trying their best to make something that will make others happy. And if what others want is sex and violence, then who are we to deny them that right? So I say, bounce on, Dead or Alive, bounce on.
Thank you once again for joining us for another episode of Mics and Memory Cards. Please join us again next week as we go over the number 1 greatest selling game on the PlayStation 1, Gran Turismo. And please, if you're listening, don't forget to like, subscribe, do what you do when it comes to our podcast on whatever your platform of choice is. In the meantime, my name's Jacob.
Tyler.
And my name is Kameron.
And you've been listening to Mics and Memory Cards.